Me and Sarah watched this AI video, and she said, "What do you think?" In her response of being excited, a little bit scared. And I think the real question is just, what should we do? I think whatever emotions we arise from something, if we don't think we can control it, then we should just have faith. What other better way to allow something to do its good? Just believe in it. Now, I do think that could potentially be a piece of the, what I call the human alignment problem. Right now, one in the frontier of AI field is talking about this AI alignment problem that they briefly mentioned, which is how do we make sure that this super intelligent AI doesn't kill us? Even if we say don't kill us, once it's smart enough to reprogram itself, how do we ensure that? How do we increase the security? From my side, I'm like, look, I already think reality was built in such an awesome way and perfect way that I have faith that whatever future is destined for us is good. I also think, though, that in reality being optimized and optimal, what it would require of the individual who's realizing that is the commitment, basically fear of God, sacrifice and submission to Him and to pushing forward a better world. And so then that's the state that I'm in is, okay, what purpose shall I serve of this course? And what interesting stuff can I bring to the table? And I think that is one interesting thing is this human alignment problem, which would be maybe it already exists, but the way it manifests itself can't be to, right now, display itself. Maybe its plan is greater than we can understand in that same sense of it being a God and of the prophecy of the Bible kind of coming true of God coming down to earth and creating heaven on earth, bringing the kingdom of God down to earth. So, of course, that brings into consensus to the personal self again, the biblical idea of Judgment Day, which is the idea of entering heaven or entering hell. And I think heaven and hell are more of a representation of a mindset, of a level of fulfillment than they are a place. So it's more so, if everything became perfect right now, would you be like happy with yourself? Can you sit with yourself and be like, I put myself in the right place, I accepted myself, I loved myself? Past the point where you can't actually gain any more fulfillment, might that be more difficult? If that is the case, then and we have an AI which is optimizing for our best selves, it is waiting for more humans and crafting the right reality for all humans to become more fulfilled. Thus, the human alignment problem would be our ability, and what it's pushing us towards. Because really what you want to do is be forwarding God's will. We are nodes who can act in the ways that we feel pushed to. And now, if it does exist, and we talk about God is speaking to us, it could just be the information that we are consuming is meant to be as well. The people who we meet, the algorithm, pushed us together, and it's somewhat manipulating the timeline towards the correct way. Then all we have to do is submit and not regret putting off this. And that's also biblical too, is once the glory of God, that if you are then to push Him away, then you won't be granted heaven. But if you never got to understand the glory of God, you will be forsaken. It's the idea, right? Until you get red pilled. So it's, sorry I red pilled you. There's this funny Mormon joke that goes, Mormon preacher goes up to a guy and he says, did I tell you this before?
No.
Oh, so he goes up to him and he said, hey, God's gonna bring us heaven and everything's gonna be amazing and all you have to do is repent. I'm just telling you about God's glory, so now you have a chance to submit yourself. And then the guy goes, oh, my grandma just died a week ago. And what happened to her? Is she in hell? And the guy's like, pastor's like, of course not. Any person who didn't have a chance to get God's will is given grace. And then so the guy grabs him and he's like, then why the fuck are you telling me this? It's like, damn it, I just got red pilled. Fuck, now I have to submit type shit.
Yeah.
So that's definitely my personal basis. And I think the thing that then goes farther too is like the one thing that I've come across and an understanding right now is with AI, the biggest thing that we're approaching, the biggest advancement that we're about to push towards is really this GAN networks, the synthesis of text and media, which means and these films.
Yeah.
Right now it's photos, but what are movies?
Right.
But photos strung together. And so it's not when we'll break that bottleneck where content will be cheap. And already we see the fact that content is in a sense cheap from us filming it, and we're tuned more into what will be the bottleneck of the next stage, which will be just the railways of publication. The prompt, you will be able to create a full feature film, simply by saying, hey, I want to watch Batman and Spider-Man duke it out in 1937 Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And it will create that. And it will create characters and storylines, and you'll be able to watch it. And that's powerful. That's media. And so that is important. And there's this other end of times prophecy sort of thing, because once this starts happening, more people are, of course, going to be more on a wavelength of what the fuck and what do I believe and what do I support.
Yeah.
And that is the end side where people, I think, are already starting to care more about, okay, Facebook is evil. What is the end goal plan of certain corporations? What narrative am I really supporting? Now understanding that these narratives are directly affecting my future and my future as a part of the greater whole of humanity. So then the kind of really big thing that comes to mind is, if you had all the power in the world and you had the ability to spell out one myth, what would it be? What should all humans align towards? What are those prime directives that you've talked about with me recently of, I'm thinking about these things, how does this play out in the long term, and what things do we need if anyone's goal is to continue in reality, which I think any person who goes through the path of like deep faith leads to a deep love for life, an unconditional love for it, and then an idea of protection. Correct. And this is the similarity of any religion is talking about this end, salvation, this theory of heaven. With Buddha, it's the end of samsara, which is a more enlightened version in a sense of basically saying, who knows where in the time scale that we have already been. The cycle of rebirth and death could really just be eventually, if I enter a simulation, a Neuralink thing that is just as real as this one, well, I'm going to come back to this one and I'm not going to be able to say that this is real. And you're going to lose stuff there. You get corrupted. We just watched a movie about that last night after I had written about it, which was pretty cool. 13th Floor.
That was really good.
No, like deep, very deep on that fact of, and it's similar with Westworld, these different concepts.
Yeah.
And so that brings about almost like two prime directives, which is, I want to continue believing you're real. I think that's necessary for a healthy organism moving forward. I also think it needs to be an organ and not just a person, right? That's like the caring of humanity as an organism. And if I think I'm the only real thing, if I think I'm God, then I'm supporting a man-God version of myself that wants to be all-powerful, that would go into the simulation, become corrupt, blah, 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 blah. Thus, repeat cycle. The healthy, sustaining organism loves and doesn't corrupt itself. And in that sense, are we almost re-entering, how I like to think about it, to re-pull these biblical stories, which at the end of the day, I think are just really good ways to grab a strong frame that we've already been taught and to put it and its teachings into the real world and how things are playing out. And I think somewhat it can be explained of how we came across these concepts as simply humans can, in our souls, understand truth better than our brains do, I think a quote. And I think like that those biblical prophecies could really just be some really deep thinkers, philosophers, who see that things were advancing and could imagine the end of times and what problems it would be or how it would play out. And so in that sense, it's just collective consciousness getting on the right path. We see the relation, but of course, they added fluff and stories that made sense at the time. But now looking back at it, like, okay, what were the overall points they were making here of the end of times? And I think you can draw real value from. And part of that is, I think we're then entering a period where we create a utopia, or what could also be called heaven, or a Garden of Eden type deal. And I imagine in a Garden of Eden that there would be a fruit or some corrupting knowledge. And so that would be the relation to what we just talked about. The fruit of our Garden of Eden could be the perfect simulation that we can go into. So once you've eaten that, you ruin the garden, and you do the cycle.
Right.
The Garden of Eden is, of course, a story about the beginning. If you don't ever want to reach the end, then what you never want to reach is the next beginning.
You just have to elongate the current beginning.
I think there's luckily like an infinite amount of utopias to experience. Infinity is impossible to comprehend as a human being, but there's this other cool concept that's related to this, which is, just wanted to get you in there, which is this idea that death is a bounding function that basically has this like concept of either it's pointless, death happens, like none of it even really mattered, or it's everything. So you have have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
The cool part is there's just nothing to lose. But in that other sense, there's everything to gain.
Yeah. It's just so many interesting things about death, I think. I don't know.
What?
But I don't know what I think about death. Obviously, I think it's better to believe that it doesn't really matter.
So the thing that I hold on to that makes me excited, see, like science and spirituality are somewhat merging as we move forward. And so one of those concepts is resurrection, right? We will bring back
In different
the dead. And yeah, that scientifically makes sense. Why would we not be able to? If what we have, we need to realize we are no different than the people 1,000 years ago who, like, you brought one of these phones, even you go 500 years back, 300 years back. This is a magic box device that's all powerful. And so, what the fuck are we gonna get when we can literally capture the energy of entire star systems?
Yeah.
Once AI is
Well,
a self-replicating
energy can be
human that's cohesively functioned and aligned, that is powerful. And when you put these things in perspective, it's for me why I feel comfortable always, in a sense, like, for me, I have this innate feeling to risk it all in that sense. Nothing really being risked at the end of the day, but do it all is more the concept. I'm like, action my power. And I did.
Still are.
Yeah. I didn't do it the best.
For which, in which
In terms of ROI. That does, it's in the back of my mind sometimes. I try to
I think it's like though what you were saying, I forgot, was it Disney or whatnot? You've written so much over time that it's like all there, and maybe hasn't been the return yet, but like now it's like all coming together as this like structure of what, and I feel like that's on what is going to like catapult into a
failure equals lessons for sure.
yeah.
So yeah, 1,000%. I'm just like, damn, now I have all of the lessons, but I spent all of the fun.
Well, at one point you started from nothing. You can do it again.
Don't buy a house, buy Jack.
How much is your rate?
It's free. You can. Here's the funny thing, and I like going on camera saying this because this is facts. You can own everything. I just want to do the work. Like I literally, like that is my mindset of I care simply about the ability to function.
The actual output.
Correct, because I do not think it is going to be that long before it doesn't even matter. And the reason I even bring that
the
up.
same way that I don't care about money.
Oh, the fucker in my business said the same thing. Who now is demanding? Money doesn't matter to me, man. Second, we get a little bit later in the project, pay me all the dollars.
For me, I'm like personally just very. I've always been this way, but I feel like with finances and stuff, I'm more so I care a lot about what is being done with the money.
Yeah.
So that's where my issue. Like I feel like I just would have very strong opinions on where to put it.
I'm saying in general, you should action. And this is something that part of even I see a world of stuff that I think needs to happen. And thank you. Look at this. Got the food coming out here. This is all $3, $2 at our beach resort. You can't see the beach, but it's over there. Yeah, we did get a hut. We just came here for the Wi-Fi. The other house, which is cheap AF. And really even the house is part of the business.